Christopher Nolan's Inception was a film I had no expectations for going into when it came out 8 years ago, but what I can say is that it quite literally changed my life, and you would not be watching this if it weren't for Inception. I know that may seem like kind of a big disconnect, like Tech Channel, how did that show up from Inception? You could say Chris Nolan planted the seed in my mind. But when people ask me like, what's your favorite movie? It's hard for me to come up with a definitive answer. So I usually just have a bunch of movies that I would say are my favorite of all time. There's not one better than the other because it depends on the genre, but Inception is by far one of the top movies of everything I've ever watched that I love the most. So I was never really a film guy, and before Inception came out, I wanted to go into the military. I had a lot of different ideas of what I wanted to do, but when Inception came out, it challenged what traditional movies and filmmaking was for me, because normally I just liked Star Wars, I liked some superhero movies here and there. I was only 12 years old at the time, so I didn't have a terrible interest in making movies. It was just something I knew about. I watched YouTube here and there, but it was mostly for entertainment purposes. I never wanted to make my own YouTube channel. But when Inception first released, I watched the movie in theaters because that's what my family was going to go and watch, and I didn't have a car at the time. I just had to go where the family was, and I watched it, and it blew my mind. The twists and turns of the plot, the completely original mindset of people who go into the minds of others and change the way they think about things by entering their dreams. Maybe it's been done lightly in other films before, but maybe never quite as drastic and as literal as Inception did it. I didn't even watch the trailers going into this movie. I wasn't really a guy who paid attention to things like that, which if you've seen the Inception trailers, you can tell that you get nothing out of those trailers, which I think is the sign of a really good movie, a film that is so complex and so intricate between its characters' motivations, the plot structure, and how the film is told, that in 2 minutes you really cannot sum it up, and that's why the trailers for Inception really did not do it justice. All they could really say is, your mind is the scene of the crime, and usually people read that and went, what are you trying to say, Chris? What's going on? But then I watched it and I still couldn't understand a lot of it. And that's kind of how I started having conversations with it with other people was, did you get it? Did you understand this part? I'm confused. I'm not sure how it's working. And it was the first film ever really to do that for me. You know, there may be other films that make you think like that and make you watch it over and over again. But Inception, at least in my childhood, was the first movie to make me do that. It was the first movie that I had to stop, think about how the movie worked, and then say, I gotta go back. I gotta go watch it again. And I rewatched Inception so many times back in the theater. I begged my parents to let me go watch it again, as well as when it came out on iTunes. I bought it immediately and I watched it over and over and over again. Between the cinematography, and it really birthed my love of practical effects. Specifically the hallway scene with Arthur when he's fighting this guy and the gravity's going haywire and they're jumping all over the walls and stuff. The first time I watched that on screen, I literally, my jaw dropped. I could not understand how this was happening or what CG was being used. So immediately I go on YouTube to look up behind the scenes and to find out that they literally just built a set and rotated the whole thing just for this very simple action scene. It made me fall in love with filmmaking. Not long after that, I started watching more of Chris Nolan's work, starting with the Dark Knight trilogy. But of course, Dark Knight Rises was not out yet, but that's when I watched Prestige, Memento, and so on. But anyway, focusing mostly on Inception here, I think what I loved about it was I went into it blind, you know, not really expecting anything, and I literally had no idea where the movie was going. It's not every day that happens now, especially in most blockbusters. You know exactly how things are going to go. You can anticipate how things are going to end, or you can dumb it down to a couple different alternatives. It's like, it'll either end this way or this way, and maybe a few minor details. When I was watching Inception, it was literally like, this could go any number of ways, and just the idea that you can go into someone's brain and fight their subconscious, which can or can't be trained against you, to learn how to fight back and also learn how to teach someone how there are architects to dreams and there are hitmen in your dreams and people can impersonate different people in your life. And Tom Hardy's character is able to hang out with Fisher's uncle and figure out what his uncle acts like, and every bit of it was so easy to dive into, and it was so easy to analyze and really fall into this universe that was not a book and was not a previously made TV show or anything. It was just an idea that Chris Nolan had, and that idea just inspired me so much because it made me realize how much a film can make someone think. It was the first time in my life I realized a film could be powerful. It could entertain and yet be insightful and educate simultaneously. And the fact that the whole time you're watching that movie, you're constantly thinking, is this in a dream? Is this in a dream? The marketing of that film was so successful that most trailers have rivaled it now with the whole sound effect trend. That thing has been like modernized now. And at the box office, in fact, Inception did pretty well considering it wasn't a previously existing title. And the trailers did like no justice for what the movie actually was. Because if you've seen Inception, you know that there's no way you can sum up that plot line in 2 minutes. Maybe if a YouTuber's just talking into a microphone, he could do it. So let me try to explain best I can. Agents of Men work on something called extraction, which is when they go inside someone's brain, find personal information, find secrets that people hire them to, and then they leave, accessing them through their dreams, obviously, a mental game. But then one client approaches them and says that our main character, Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, can get back to his family, which he's currently arrested for because his wife killed himself thinking she was in a dream. This client wants him to plant an idea in someone's mind and change their mind on a particular topic in order to better their business competitiveness. So they get inside their subject's brain and find out that they have been trained by other extractors to defend their subconscious, so their subconscious is militarized. They fight against them in the dream, and the only way to plant the idea so that it will actually take and grow like a plant is to go deeper and deeper into his mind by making dreams within dreams within dreams. But if you go within too many dreams, you'll slip into limbo, which is like a purgatory state of being lost in someone's subconscious and you can't get out of it. You following this? If you haven't seen Inception, all I can say is that I can't really sum it up super well, but it is an extremely well done picture. The amount of practical effects they use in it, and they do use CG in just the right amount of doses and in just the right places. If I had to critique Inception in certain ways, I may say Leonardo's acting can get a little bit repetitive sometimes. We get it. He loves Mal and he's sad about Mal. I don't know, maybe I've seen the film so many times it starts to get on my nerves, but my favorite characters in the film are by far Tom Hardy and Arthur, who is played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who just kind of have slick, cool guy attitudes. They work together, but they can be kind of funny, but the way they're able to fight the subconscious within people's brains is really, really interesting. Now, luckily, they do kind of go along with that movie cliche of being hurt in the dream can have real world effects. That way, there are stakes, there are rules established in this universe so that when you're getting shot or when you're getting hit by a car, you're not constantly saying, oh, none of this matters because it's all in a dream, so how could you actually get hurt? But many of us have had dreams that have felt very real before, and you may realize that you can feel legitimate pain within your own dreams, so they kind of play with that idea. The technology they use in this movie is definitely not available, the idea that you could have a shared dream with someone, but they don't stress too much on the technology part of it, which I think is good because it doesn't exist. But what I like about Inception is that they clearly establish the rules of the universe. They don't dwell too much on the details. Sure, you could probably break it down into say why sharing dreams with someone isn't really possible. You can't just share someone's mental space and be like, this is a server that people can connect to like Fortnite. That's not really how it works, but they establish the rules. You can get hurt in the dream, you can get lost in limbo, but you can also extract information like passwords, security codes, private information from people when they are hired to, and as this movie is showing as a pioneering time in their universe, plant ideas in someone's head. Give them the idea to actually act in the real world. And as the movie ends, it proves to work. Fisher changes his mind, but then of course we end on this brilliant cliffhanger of the totem that each of these guys who goes into people's dreams have. A little object that is unique enough in its own regard that you can use it to separate yourself from what is a dream and what is reality. Because, for instance, Arthur has a weighted die. You don't want anyone else to see it, but you know how that die is going to roll. So every time you roll it, if it does roll the way it typically does in reality, then you know you're in real life. But if you roll it and it doesn't land the way it's supposed to, then you know because of that little detail that you are in a dream. Now, Cobb has a top, which was Mal's totem. Mal is his wife who killed himself, but still lives within his subconscious and is haunting him like a ghost. He planted the idea in her mind that the limbo reality they fell into was not real, so he spins the top in her safe, and that's how Inception was done in the first place, which is kind of a reveal that happens later in the film. But there's actually been a really deep analysis of what Cobb's actual totem is, because a lot of people started wondering, well, if the top that he spins is Mal's totem, but Mal is dead, how can it be his totem now too? Which is why some have theorized that Cobb's totem is not the top at all, and if you watch the movie very closely, you'll discover that in the real world, he doesn't wear his wedding ring anymore, but in the dream world, he still has the wedding ring, showing that attachment to Mal is still there, as if they are still married, they are still a couple when they're in the dream. dream, but when he's out of the dream, he doesn't have the wedding ring, which you have to look really, really hard for. And when people were asking after the film came out, Mr. Nolan, is he in a dream? Is he not in a dream? All he says is just pay attention, you know, watch very, very closely. And that's how they found out that ending of the movie, spoiler alert, but this did come out 8 years ago, Cobb actually does see his kids at the end of the movie. He's not in a dream. They held on the top just to play with your brain a little bit because he's not wearing the wedding ring in the real world. So that's not something people noticed right away. This took actual years for people to find out about Inception, and shows how much detail and a lot of thought Chris Nolan put into tiny things like that in the script. So that's what I love about Chris Nolan. I love all of his films, some more than others for sure. I wasn't the biggest fan of Dunkirk. I liked it, but it wasn't on the same caliber that I liked Inception and Interstellar. Might have to make more videos about those if you're interested in them, but you guys should know that Inception is what changed the way I feel about movies. It's what made me want to become a filmmaker, which inevitably made me want to become a YouTuber, and now I'm a YouTuber. So if Inception never would have come out, you wouldn't be watching this, and I hope that someday I'll be able to make serious, thoughtful movies just like Chris Nolan that make you think and make the expectations of film twist inside your head and make you not realize which way the film is going to go. That's what I like to see in cinema, movies that make you think. So, have you seen Inception? Do you like Christopher Nolan? Definitely let me know in the comments below. This has been another episode of Drew Reviews, and I hope you all have an excellent day. Take care.